Thanks, present Miss Collins, you're the best. No, thank you, past Miss Collins, you're the best. Howdy guys, past Miss Collins here, and today we are going to be learning all about tie-dye. Now, tie-dye has been around for quite a while. Tie-dye became most popular during the 60s, and it got its name from exactly what it means. Tie-dye means to tie something first. We're going to be securing our tie-dye pieces with a rubber band, which is often used in traditional tie-dye. And after we have secured them or tied them, then we will use different kinds of colors to dye them. You can use a lot of different stuff. There are some certain tie-dye kits that are commonly used, but we are actually going to do some recycling with today's artwork. So I have already filled up these little containers with some colored material. Now this colored material actually comes from some washable markers. So unfortunately we won't be able to permanently dye anything today, which is why we are not using t-shirts or masks or anything like that. Our tie-dye liquid is washable, so we want to use something that we won't put in the wash, which is this little coffee filter that you see here. So I have soaked our washable Crayola markers in some water for a couple days, and then I have dumped that liquid into these containers here. You guys will see these in your classroom, but you actually won't handle them yourselves. What you will see is this palette. So in this palette, I am going to put our three primary colors. I have red, yellow, and blue, and you guys can use those three colors to practice your own color mixing. So Miss Collins there in the present will come deliver you a palette. This is typically used for paint, but for today it's going to hold our different sorts of dyes, and then she will place some red, yellow, and blue marker liquid in your palette so that you can have those primary colors already available to you, but you also have areas to mix your own colors if you choose. Some other things you will see, of course, you are going to have your coffee filters. You should have two. We will be doing two different kinds of tie-dye methods. You're going to see a little squeezy dropper. This is probably the most important part of our entire piece because this is how we're going to get our liquids from our palette to our coffee filter. You also have some rubber bands, like I mentioned before, because this is going to be how we tie our coffee filter into place. You'll have a Ziploc bag and a permanent marker. This is how you will take those pieces home. We won't actually untie them or unwrap them until they have completely dried. So first thing we're going to do is take that Ziploc bag, and you're going to write your name on the outside. So once you have your name written on your Ziploc, you are simply going to sit that off to the side for now. We will not need that at the moment. Now everyone's going to have a plate. This is to keep our mess kind of isolated. My plate is a rectangle, but yours will probably be more traditional. It'll probably just be a circular plate. This is just what I had readily available to me at the moment. I also forgot to mention that you will also have these clips. These clips are going to be equally as important as the dropper because this is how we are going to keep our fingers from getting stained. Miss Collins, like I said, will come around and fill up your palette with our primary colors. Now we have plenty of this, so if you ever need a refill, just let Miss Collins know. But in order to maximize social distancing and keeping our germs to ourselves, this is how we are going to be dyeing our pieces today. Please be patient with present Miss Collins as she fills up your palettes. Before we begin the tie-dyeing process, we should all have a setup that looks like this. We have a plate for our mess, we have our palette with our primary colors, we have our dropper, which is how we will actually apply the dye to our coffee filters, which you should have two of, and you should also have some rubber bands and some clothespins. So the first method that we're going to talk about is the spiral method. Now there's a couple different ways to do this spiral method. The first is the more traditional way that you would often see done to t-shirts or blankets or things like that that are tie-dyed in the more traditional way. And that is by simply placing your material down, our coffee filter in this case, and you are going to find the middle, give it a little pinch, and then you will twist it on itself. So I'm simply twisting my coffee filter into this spiral shape. Spiral is a line that we have discussed when we talked about our very important element of art, line. And you will kind of just scrunch those extra pieces into place. It doesn't have to be pretty, but you can see I have that kind of spiral shape. It looks like a little cinnamon bun. With this messy kind of bunched up coffee filter, I'm going to kind of just pinch mine a little bit tighter so that it's all bunched up like that. And then you can take a rubber band and secure it. Now, like I said, this is the more traditional way to do our spiral method, but there's also another way that I've practiced on my own, and it seems to work out just as good. Now, it doesn't matter where you wrap your rubber bands because the liquid is going to soak into our coffee filter here no matter what. So it doesn't matter if your rubber band is covering up a lot of your coffee filter, you're still going to be able to dye it just the same. So I'm going to set that one off to the side and show you the other way that we can use our spiral method. So remember, you will only get 2 coffee filters, so you can decide if you want to do one of them spiral, both of them spiral, or neither one of them spiral, but you only get 2. I'm going to use a couple more here in this video just to show you some different methods, but you guys will only be allowed to do 2 tie-dye pieces. The other way you can spiral is very similar to the first, which is where you lay it out flat. You'll find the middle, and this time you're actually going to pick it up, and you're going to pull everything down in one direction. So I'm making this kind of cone shape almost. So once you have the middle secure and you have all of the rest pulled down, you're simply going to twist. It doesn't matter which direction. So you're twist, 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 nice and tight so that it looks something like this. And then same thing as before, you'll use a rubber band to secure it. Okay, the next method that I'm going to show you is one of my favorites, and it's super challenging, probably really difficult. I don't know if you guys will be able to master it. What you're going to do is, just like before, you'll lay out your piece flat, and then you are going to simply scrunch up your coffee filter. So you will ball it up like you were going to throw it away, but instead of throwing it away, we are going to turn this little scrunch into an artwork. Then, just like before, we will secure this little nugget that we have. Right now I have my spirals, I have my scrunch method, and then there's endless other ways that you can tie-dye as well. You guys could choose to fold up your piece and see what happens in that scenario. You should get some lines that are a little bit more geometric, but it will all depend. This entire thing is kind of an experiment for us. Now, for a couple of these, if you end up folding, it might actually be easier for us to attach something like a paper clip. So I will have some paper clips with me just in case you need to tie your tie-dye piece down with something that's a little bit easier when it comes to these flatter pieces. It's kind of hard to wrap a rubber band around that and keep it nice and flat. So I will bring some of these paper clips as well, but when you are tie-dyeing, you must secure it in some way, whether that's tying it with a rubber band, tying it with string, or tying it with something like a paper clip. Once you have your pieces all tied, the next step is to attach our clips. Now these clips here are super important because these are going to become our new fingers or our new hands. So you will simply clip your clothespin onto your tied piece, and that is how you're going to dye it. So you won't have to ever touch your piece again. It's going to go directly from touching this clothespin, being dyed, into your Ziploc bag. So I like to open my Ziploc bag at this point so that it's ready to catch my pieces once they are all dyed. So when it comes to dyeing your piece, you're going to simply use your dropper, and you are going to add little drops, you don't need much, to your coffee filter. Your coffee filter is absorbent, so it should soak up a lot of that color and penetrate even the parts that are super inside. I'm actually going to start off with one of my spiral pieces. With these pieces, you might even need to clip to the rubber band. If you can't get it clipped around the whole thing, that's fine. I like to just pull up a small piece of my rubber band and put my clip inside of there. And of course, Miss Collins in the present can help you with this because that is kind of tricky. I just want to have it so that my fingers don't have to touch this guy anymore. Okay, so I'm going to do this first spiral piece that I made with just the primary colors. So in order to be able to pick up your colors, you're going to have to squeeze first, and when you let it go, that air that is going to pull up that colors. If I go into it first and squeeze, I'm just going to make bubbles, and that's not really what we want. You want to squeeze it, put your pipette in your liquid, and then let go, and that should hold that color in there. Now, whenever you're applying your drops, you want to hold over your plate so we're not getting any of this dye on our desk. Then you can simply drop your color into wherever you want it. I really like these little pipettes because you can really squish that color into there. You can press that color in by putting it right up to the coffee filter and squeezing it out. And you can see I'm using very, very gentle squeezing motions, and you guys should be doing the same. Now we will probably get a little bit of color mixing here because we don't have anything to thoroughly clean out our pipette, but that's okay, and that's just part of our process that we're going to have here. So then I'm going to pick up some red. You can also just leave some white in your artwork, and that's totally fine as well. You can see I'm getting a little bit of spillage, but I'm catching it all on my plate, which is exactly what I want. And really what you could do is, because these are so absorbent, you can actually go in and start to pick up some of that mess if you have a whole bunch. I just had a few drops. I should not start to see puddles on this plate. There's no reason we should be squeezing out the whole pipette on our plate here. Any mess can happen here, but we should not have puddles. You can see where my colors are starting to mix, where my red was mixing with my blue. I'm starting to get a violet. Over here, I'll probably start to see some orange. And if I add some yellow here, I can start to see a little peep of green happening in there. So I'm starting to make those secondary colors simply by using my primary colors. Okay, once I am happy with my piece, then I'm going to take my Ziploc. I'll pop my tie-dyed piece inside, and if it's clipped the way mine was, you have to kind of yank it out, but I'm holding it from the outside so my fingers don't get dyed. All the dye is kept inside my little bag. Then you can move on and continue to dye your other pieces. With this piece, I want to experiment with making some secondary colors. Now, I don't want to just make them on my piece like I did with my first tie-dyed project. I actually want to make some secondary colors of my own. So I'm going to take a little bit of my blue, and I'm going to pop those right next door. So I have my main blue, but then I have two little pods of blue next door to it. And I want to do the same thing with my red, except my red I'm going to bring over here, and then I'll bring a little bit of my red to this spot. Pick up a little bit of yellow. I'm going to try to mix that with this piece and mix that with this piece. So what I should have seen is, mixing these colors together, I should start to get my secondary colors. So let's go back and check. Let's see if this turned into what I was hoping for, which is green. Awesome. So I have made my own green here. You can experiment with your ratios. If you put more blue, it'll become more of a blue-green or a teal. If I put more yellow, it would be more of a yellow-green or a lime kind of color. This one, red and blue, that should have ended up with what? Hopefully it is a violet. Awesome. And then for my final color, there we go, there's our orange. So I have all of my secondary colors on this piece. I'm finished with this piece, so again, I'm going to pop it inside my Ziploc. I also want to show you just what all of these methods look like, so you have an idea of the ones you would like to use. I did sort of a rainbow color on this one, using all of my colors that I have made. And finally, with my folded piece here, I'm just going to do a bunch of random colors. Okay, now once you are finished and all of your tie-dyed pieces are inside your little baggie, you're going to simply zip it closed all the way until you hear that little pop. And then you will take these home and you will not open them until at least tomorrow. Now, in order to help them out, when you get them home, I would open them up to give them some air, and then just sit them with their Ziploc bag nice and open and breezy, and leave them until they have reached a good point. Then you can pull them out and start to see which wonderful tie-dye creations you have made. With the mess that is left over on your table, you should have a mess plate, which Miss Collins will pick up. You should have a messy little tube or pipette here, and you will also have a very messy mixing plate. So Miss Collins will take care of all of these things. We are going to recycle them, so please don't throw anything away. Present Miss Collins will come around and pick up your mess along with your clips. The only thing you guys will keep is your Ziploc baggie with your beautiful tie-dyes inside. Now, because I am the art teacher, that means I occasionally get to break the rules. So what I'm going to do is put on some gloves, and I am going to go ahead and undo my tie-dye pieces while they are still wet, which is not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to let them dry completely before you open them up. But I want you guys to have a good idea of what these designs will look like when you actually make them on your own. So I believe I have my two spirals here. I have my scrunch method and then my folded method as well. So I'm going to take some scissors and snip off each of my rubber bands, being very gentle here not to nick my coffee filters. Now, typically you would keep them tied while they're drying so that they efficiently soak up the color where you want them. When you start to release them, that color is going to kind of spread. So my designs will be a little more loose than yours probably will, but they'll still behave the same way. So you will still cut off your rubber band or pull off your paper clip very gently. And then I'm going to start to peel them open so you guys can see what we get. You're going to very carefully open it back up, and you can see I have that very traditional kind of tie-dye spiral. There are a few white spots here, and it is kind of hard to see because it is still wet. When they're drier, the color is going to be a lot more vibrant, but this is what I have for my spiral, which I'm kind of happy with. And when I open this one, it's going to be more of a radial design, so it's going to be less of a spiral where it gets larger like this one. With this one, my spiral starts in the middle and gets bigger and bigger and bigger as it goes out. With the pull down method, where you kind of pulled it and then twisted, you're going to get much more of a radial design. So you can see my lines are kind of even. I have this circle that starts in the middle, and then it just grows as you have the different layers. So that's another way there. All right, for my scrunch, this is the one I just balled up, which of course was very difficult. We were all very challenged by that method. And when I pull this one open, it's going to be much more random. My colors don't have any sort of order. There's no pattern to it. It's just random colors in sporadic areas. So there's my secondary colors with our scrunch design. And finally, our folded pattern. This was one that I just folded up, sort of like a pizza. And when I open this one, I'm going to have a repetitive pattern. It's going to be symmetrical in these different folds that I made. You can see I have these yellow spots all here, these orange spots all here. My little pizza slices are going to be very similar. So that is the folded method. Whichever one you decide to do, please don't expect them to turn out exactly like mine. It's not going to happen because we are using different dyes and different spots with different methods. All of our pieces are going to turn out different, but equally amazing. So good luck with this. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with. Have fun!